Today I'm going to be trimming some vases, and actually one of the vases is the porcelain vase that I made in my last video. But not only are we going to be trimming vases, we're going to be telling stories, or more than telling stories, I'm going to be sharing a lot of my thought process and what I think about when I reflect on pieces and my pieces that I make. I think one of the pivotal parts of my brand, Assange Ceramics, is storytelling. In fact, my mission statement is telling stories through the art of ceramics. And that's because I think everything has a story, to be honest with you. Even the most mundane thing in your life, like your toothbrush, could tell a story. Your toothbrush sees you straggle into the bathroom every morning, whether you're having a good morning or a bad morning. I think everything just tells a story. So I guess today I'm going to be kind of free flowing. Sorry if it gets real ranty, if it gets real random, but I'm going to be free flowing by just describing a bunch of things these pieces tell me. It may even turn into a clear, cohesive, blended form of a story. So without further ado, let's get into it. I think when I'm thinking about my pieces, reflecting on my pieces and seeing like what type of story they tell me, this usually comes after I've made my piece, to be honest with you. While I'm making the piece, I think I just have a shape in my mind. And I'm just like, okay, what am I gonna make this? How am I gonna make this? It's more so a battle and a fight between myself and skill sets and the clay, and to seeing what I form, whether the clay is gonna let me form what I wanna form, or the clay is gonna turn into itself. And I think that in itself is a story. But I think most of my process goes after I've made the piece and it's completed and I've designed it, maybe embellished it. I think the embellishments can even turn into a story. I think about shape a lot, and I think about the form. I think when I look at this piece, I think about how gravity sets in. And I think that'll be a theme and trend between both pieces that I'm going to be showing today, is I guess the flow of gravity and how physics work and how weight is displaced throughout the piece. With me, I say this piece is balance, because a lot of the weight is held at the bottom, so it keeps the piece very grounded. I think this is a stable piece. If this piece was a person, I think this piece would be wise. I think since it's plump and curvy towards the bottom, I think of a matriarch. I think of an African matriarch. I think of matriarchs a lot, and I think in my life I see a lot of matriarchal forms. I think you see a lot of matriarchs in African culture in general, and I think my mother herself is a powerful matriarch that I've seen in my life. So when I look at this piece and I see that the rounded bottom, I see that the weight goes to the bottom. If you see it has a narrow neck, it just makes me think that this piece is grounded. When I think about this piece as well, I would think of this piece as something that has been through things in this life. And the reason why I say that is because I made this piece with a stoneware, and I think it has like a really rough texture. Even as I'm kind of like, how do I say it? When I'm centering my pieces, sometimes when I get my hand real close to that bottom and like my skin is rubbing against the bat, some clay is at the bottom, and this clay has pebble pieces in it. So this clay could end up scratching me or even kind of cutting through and digging through. So I kind of think of this piece as having a bit of roughness to it, edgewise and internally, because let's be real, like a lot of the plights we have in our life, a lot of things that wear on us, tug on us. Even if you are the most kind person, I think sometimes that roughness can meet you in the heart as well. It can dig there. Even I think if at your core you are still that kind of gentle person, it can still touch you. So when I think of the material that I use to make the clay, I think of a bit of roughness. But like I said, it can vary. It doesn't mean like this, he's just like this grumpy piece, this mad piece all the time. It's been through some things. That's what I think about when I think about this clay. And I think I'm going to talk about this porcelain piece a little bit too as well. I'm going to be flowing back and forth between the pieces, because as you see, I kind of like go back and forth between how I trim them. Even though I kind of should have trimmed them one at a time and finish, because I don't want my clays to mix. I kind of want to keep my porcelain on the side with itself, and I want to keep my stoneware on the side with itself, but that's another story for a different time. But when I think about this piece, once again, going back to the way weight is held on a piece and the way physics and gravity works, I think this piece is very unstable, and I think this piece just kind of like it's tumbling a bit around the world, because as you can see, well, you'll see a bit more, but this piece has a lot of its weight shifted towards the top and has a narrower bottom. And we think about how physics work and we think about how things flow. If the weight is at the top, let's say when it's spinning, all this weight is going to be at the top. The bottom is going to try its best to keep it in center and keep it in one place, but the weight at the top is going to do what gravity does. It's going to do what physics does, and it's going to kind of throw off the balance of the piece. As you can see, like if you look a little bit closer here, you see it's kind of like boom, narrow neck, but then you have these like broad shoulders, and then you get down to that base and it's a bit smaller than the rest, and you can even see it as it's spinning. I think this piece was not even just literally the concept or the process of making this piece is a bit off center a little bit, as you see, because when I'm like pulling those walls up and the walls get kind of taller and nearer, things have a hard time holding their balance and holding their center. You're gonna have that spinning going around. So I think this piece kind of just, I don't know, when I look at this piece, actually it makes me think of Miss Doubtfire. I don't know why, but that's just what came to my mind just right now, looking at this piece and seeing this like broader top. Maybe if it was a person, it would be like, I don't know, Miss Mary Matt with super buttons down her back. Or who do you remember that one story with that like grumpy teacher? She had a mole and she had a black dress and she had that long nose. For some reason this piece makes me think of that. I don't know why, but she just seems like, how I say it, if I had to explain her day to day, I would think of her as somebody who had like curly hair and wears like floral dresses, like kind of like older floral dresses, and she's just like, oh my goodness, I have to make my coffee. She's probably late for work and she's like trying to find her keys, and she's just like, she's a massive whirlwind going through the day. Like even her morning, she doesn't have a morning routine or maybe she does, but it's just always chaotic. So the routine is chaos. She doesn't know what's going on. She does, but she's just she's having a hard time keeping it together. Maybe she might have anxiety because she's just this kind of like fumbling, flowing person. But I think she still has her wits about her, and I think she's still fun. I think she still has a lot of joy in her life despite the chaos that often comes with her life as well. When I think of age, I don't know why, this piece gives me maybe like 45 to 50. We talked about matriarch, so I guess if I say this is like 45 to 50, when I think about the first piece, maybe I might think of her as maybe a little bit older than this piece right here. A bit, or maybe she could be a little bit younger, but just still grounded, because as we know in life, I think age always doesn't matter. Age always doesn't solidify story. People are wise beyond their years, so I don't know, who knows. But for me, she just gives me this, not a grandmother, or even a grandmother that just wears frilly dresses and she's filled with light, but she's just still like passively and going through things. So I think she would have a fun history behind her. I think her youth was filled with a lot of chaos, a lot of joy. If I was to think of her in her youth, who I picture her as, I'm trying to find a good picture. I can't really think of a character right now, but I can think of the archetype. Like, I think she probably had like multiple boyfriends. I can picture her having a spicy like French Spanish boyfriend, or not French and Spanish, but spicy Spanish boyfriend, a romantic French boyfriend. I see her just kind of like bumbling through. I could see her as being a type of person that like traveled a lot in their youth, in the earlier times, like maybe like 70s. In the 70s, I can see her being that kind of almost a hippie, a little bit mildly a hippie, just kind of free flowing and just traveling and just enjoying life and just embracing all the emotions that have come to her. Or to be completely honest with you, it could be the complete opposite. She could have been this kind of stiff, like rule follower, very rigid person. Because of the shoulders, I think it can give me both ways. I think the way the weight is carried and the way the piece moves, it gives me that like kind of chaotic, real free spirited. But I think the broadness of the shoulders and the shape could give me the opposite, actually. Now that I'm actually looking, it could give me like the opposite. And like I said, she made me think of that like Miss something. If you remember the story I'm talking about, she was kind of like this like mean teacher. She could, like I said, she can give me that vibe as well. And that's kind of a lot of what I was thinking about when I was kind of seeing this piece. I don't know, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Is it making sense to you? Is the story flowing to you? I think if you hear me speak, I don't know, close your eyes and just imagine. Not close your eyes. You have to see the piece. But just kind of try to imagine what I'm trying to put down and see if it understands. But I think that's heavy. I think that's heavy of the process with a lot of things. And when I'm telling stories or when I'm kind of like reflecting on a piece, that's just kind of how my mind flows. It's just how I see things, what I like to think about. And I think it doesn't really even stop at just like trying to picture the person or what it is. Like I said before, I think I mentioned that I think certain embellishments within the piece can tell a story in itself. The process of making a piece can tell a story in itself. The weight of the piece can tell me a story. There's just so many things to look at, and just so many things to consider. Oh, and here's me doing my little trim. So I give a little of like tips and tricks about how I'm trimming. I think I use a lot of tools when I trim. If you see me like going between my tools and just picking different things for different scenarios and cases. Like down here at the bottom, I just want to get kind of like clean that what would be the kind of like the foot. I want to clean that up, and that has like this kind of like, the tool I'm using has like a kind of sharp angle where I can actually dig down there, versus like the kind of like larger loop carving tool I'm about to bust out here that kind of helps me get or trim down the general sizing of the shape, but it can't really get to the bottom like my smaller tools do. So that's a little bit about my trimming. I guess I said trimming and stories, right? So that's a bit there. I think trimming takes me a long time, because if you saw in the beginning, I take a lot of time trying to just get it center and try to get it right. And I think also I'm kind of like hyper fixated on things, as well as I think I throw a little bit wobbly as well. So, but it's given me the knack to be able to trim wobbly pieces, and I can get it pretty much looking clean and crisp and center. Ooh, I love rubbing like my sponge along the piece, like when I finish trimming, that wet sponge, and just kind of smoothing out the surface. It just does something for me. I don't know why. Maybe I'm weird like that. If anybody throws, if anybody does pottery themselves, do you feel that same way? Like when you rub that like smooth sponge on it, like look at it swirl down. But yeah, that's a bit about this piece. Do I have a name for her? I do not have a name for her, to be honest with you. What would you name her? If you've made it this far through the video, leave in the comments, what would you name this piece? What would you call her? It doesn't have to necessarily be like a human name. It could be a human name, but it could be, I think, an emotion, a feeling. It could be an element within the wilderness, an animal, a plant, a tree. It could be whatever you want to name it. What would you name this piece? I don't know. Let me know. But that's her porcelain vase, I would call her. Vessel. I call a lot of my pieces vessels because I really don't know if I want to call them vases or not. But that's about it for her. I'm just going to like clean up the foot a little bit more. And then we'll get into storytelling or a bit deeper into the first piece that you saw, the kind of like plump bottom. So I'll let the music play for a little bit before we get to there. A quick tip. This is me kind of like gathering out. I couldn't just dump like the actual tray, so I had to like pick out the porcelain pieces, because like I said, I did this weird where I was just flipping between pieces. So yeah, I had to like clean the porcelain and kind of like separate it from the stoneware. Well, back to the matriarch, the powering force. Actually, not even force. She gives me very much, like I said, wise, but a gentle wise. I think all of us probably have somebody in our life. I'm saying she, but I think this could be either or. I think this is kind of like a gender fluid, but it just gives me, I think we all have somebody in our lives that is just kind of super kind, super wise. They're kind of a little bit mysterious in a way, because even though at the surface we always see this kind of like very present, very in tune, very wise person, we don't really know their history or their story. We know they have that history because of the way they speak. They speak with a presence. They speak with an authority, but at the same time, it's an embracing kind of like an embracing tone within the way that they speak. We have people, there's a saying that it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? This is the type of person that can give you the most harshest and hardest advice, but in such like a kind, caring way that you cannot help but to take in that advice. Like you're like, dang it, I have to listen to them. I think it can be either, like I said, I think this piece can be gender fluid. I think this piece could be age fluid. Like, I don't know. I feel like we see different souls and we see different spirits at different times of our life. That's why I say like age doesn't always matter. You already know the saying, like there's like that person is an old soul. Like you may see a kid who, I don't know if you believe in reincarnation, let me know, but you may see a person or a child before that you're either like, whose grandma is watching them? Like they're a grandma baby or they're a grandpa baby where they're around old people, or you think like this kid has been here before and they're very much in tune. So I think you can see that type of wisdom in any age group, but that's just what this piece is giving me. But I think because of the way the piece is shaped and the way the piece is sized and the way it's held, I think I'm just gonna make that executive decision and say, this is a bit of an older piece. I think I wouldn't, just to keep some youth in it, I think I wouldn't put her below 30. So I'll keep 30. 30 is not very old, but 30 has experience, right? It can be between 30 and up. It can be this 100-year-old Buddha-like form of a piece. That's what this piece makes me think. But like I said before, they're very wise and they're very grounded. Like I said, with the way the weight is formed, the way the shape is held. And just look at physics. Just look how that neck is just free and the base is just doing this thing. The base is like, I'm going to hold you down, sis. Like, you don't even have to put like clay to hold me down. I'm going to hold myself down. Very much grounded and wise. Let's think. I feel like they would have a beautiful house if this piece was a person. I think they would have like a house full of plants and liveliness. I can see them having a cat or maybe even a dog. They have like this loyal companion. If they had a cat, that kind of like has a lot of affection towards it, but still a cat nonetheless. And if they had a dog, they would have like this happy dog that just a playful dog, but not, if you have dogs or you've seen dogs, a dog can range between a very chaotic crackheadish type of dog that's all over the place, or they can be a kind of gentle and soothing type of dog that's just kind of a good companion there for them. That's what I think about this piece right here. It just makes me very comfortable. It just makes me feel very safe. It just makes me feel like it has some wisdom to share with me and I can learn a lot from it, and I would want to be closer to it as well. But yeah, I think that's about it. I didn't tell an exact plot-based story, but I think I've kind of like told the elements that make up a story. We have to think of, I guess, a story setting. We think of a story's character. We think of that character's archetype, and we think about, I guess, how they might have evolved and what their development may look like. So I think that's what storytelling is about. So I think with this video, I've kind of given you that process and just showing you, I guess, how my mind works. Oh, a little tidbit on the trimming. I forgot I had to bring this back on the bat because I had to add my little like signature. If you see through my pieces, I add a bit of a line and then I add like embellishment. I was like, I can't forget that. I think with this type of piece, I just had to put it on there. But yeah, that's just how my mind flows. I guess that's how I think about things. That's how I reflect on things. And I think it's not even just exclusive to my pottery. I think that's how I reflect on a lot of my creative endeavors, and I think just life in general. Even when I kind of go about, something about me is I'm a heavy people watcher. I love to people watch. Oh my goodness, don't even get me started. I love to take a walk and just see what's going on around me, see what's happening with the day, kind of think to myself, how is that person feeling today? You see somebody with like a powerful walk, you think, oh, they're going to do their aggressive job, they're an executive, they're a CEO. I just make these things in my head and I just think about these type of things. But yeah, that's how I feel, and that's pretty much wrapping up these pieces. I'm happy. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments how you felt about this. Is it helpful to you in your creative endeavors and how you kind of think about things, or even how you move through the day? But yeah, that's really about it for trimming and telling stories. Here are the two pieces put together, bringing back the porcelain piece, and these are the two. Do they look like friends? I think they could be polar opposites that suit each other well. What do you think? But that's it for today, y'all. Bye. Oh, and make sure to subscribe, like, and comment.